I'm Kristen Goodwin. On this episode of the Fox News Rundown, President Biden delivering his first primetime address to the nation, discussing ongoing efforts to defeat the coronavirus and the vaccine rollout, which seems to be picking up speed, thanks in part to federally supported mass vaccination centers. Mike Sprayberry, the executive director for North Carolina's Division of Emergency Management, who runs a vaccine site in Greensboro, details how officials plan to vaccinate thousands a day and why he's hopeful about an end to the pandemic. President Biden signing the $1.9 trillion economic relief package into law, clearing the way for another round of stimulus checks and aid to Americans and businesses. GOP Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina discusses why he opposed the relief bill, controversy surrounding his recent remarks, and shares his thoughts on cancel culture. Plus commentary from Fox Nation host Tammy Bruce. The Fox News Rundown is a daily news podcast where we take a deeper look at the stories important to you. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast player by going to foxnewspodcast.com.
I'm Jason Chaffetz.
I'm Katie Pavlich.
I'm Steve Ducey, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, March 12th, 2021. I'm Jessica Rosenthal. It's been 1 year since the virus spread was officially declared a global pandemic, and as difficult as it's been, millions of Americans are now vaccinated.
What we are hoping is that these vaccines are going to start making a difference.
I'm Chris Foster. The Democrats' coronavirus spending bill is popular among most Americans, even a lot of Republicans. But South Carolina Senate Republican Tim Scott says he thinks the Democrats' plans will backfire.
The agenda of the left is so radical that the center-right country that we still have is going to have an allergic reaction to the medicine brought to the table. And that may be very good for us in 2022 and prayerfully in 2024.
And I'm Tammy Bruce. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
It's been 1 year since the spread of COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. A couple of days later, President Trump declared a national emergency. And as the White House pushed 15 days to slow the spread, many of us did not anticipate the year it would end up being. The run on toilet paper, the lockdowns, the loss of jobs, and permanent closing of restaurants. For many, loneliness. For others, fear of the virus. But during this past year, the light at the end of the tunnel remained vaccines.
When I came into office, you may recall, I set a goal that many of you said was that kind of way over the top. I said I intended to get 100 million shots in people's arms in my first 100 days in office. Tonight, I can say we're not only going to meet that goal, we're going to beat that goal.
In his first televised address to the nation Thursday night, President Biden commemorated the year it's been and the lives we've lost to COVID-19.
As I've told you before, I carry a card in my pocket with the number of Americans who have died from COVID to date. It's on the back of my schedule. As of now, total deaths in America, 527,726.
Nearly 528,000 people. He directed states to make all adults eligible for vaccines starting May 1st and said they would launch new tools, including a website, to make it easier to find out where to get a vaccine.
If we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout and a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day.
Now, to get to this point, the federal government has had a very hands-on role with the pharmaceutical companies that have created the vaccines, providing money and coordination, buying millions of vaccines and working to ship them to state and local officials, pharmacies, and to FEMA-supported vaccination sites, like one in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I and other reporters got a tour this week ahead of the opening.
These are called pods, and that's where people will come in. Really, it's a full-service operation. Not only will they get their vaccine administered there, they'll also stay there for observation. Correct.
Inside the Four Seasons Town Center Mall in an empty Dillard's location, chairs are spaced out for people to sit in while receiving the vaccine, and behind them is a small room.
So our Air Force team will be working from this area here. As you can see, they have various workstations set up to properly mix the vaccine along with drawing the doses up.
Mandy Williford, the emergency planning pharmacist with North Carolina State Public Health, also showed us where the vials of Pfizer vaccine were being kept, in freezers at minus 71 degrees Celsius. They expect to administer 3,000 vaccines a day at this location for the next 8 weeks in the city of Greensboro, which was selected as one of the federal vaccination sites.
Our FEMA partners, using what they call the Social Vulnerability Index,
Mike Sprayberry is the director of North Carolina Emergency Management,
actually guides us towards making decisions on where we find what are characterized as historically marginalized populations, people of color, also people that are, have, socioeconomic issues. And so that guides us in that direction, so that we know that that's a population that we need to be working, doubly hard to serve. We need to make sure that they're not forgotten. And so FEMA said, listen, based on the SVI, we think Greensboro would be a good location. And so we had thought maybe some other cities might be as well, but Greensboro turned out to be the one. And so we looked at a couple of other locations here, and obviously the ACC tournament had something to do with us not going over there, but this worked out pretty good. And so since the federal government is basically paying the freight for this operation, hard to turn down 168,000 doses that doesn't go against the state's allocation, right? So that's above and beyond our allocation. And right now, vaccine is still not at the supply level that we want it at, although we can see it. You're like me, you see it every day, the announcement, the news. It's growing incrementally, the amount of vaccines, but the faster that we can get people vaccinated, the better it is. So, good deal.
Tell me a little bit about how this works logistically, because when Greensboro was first announced as the site, it was only one of 2 sites that was announced that the federal government was operating. And now it sounds like we've heard that there are many more sites like that around the country. Am I right? I
wouldn't say many more. I would say some more. And so what I did is, when I talked with Regional Administrator Check, we saw where California and Florida were getting these pilot community vaccination centers. And so the discussion that I had with her, I told her, I said, well, California, they have 40 million people. Florida's got 19 to 20 million. North Carolina is number 9 in the nation with 10.5 million. So, I suggested to her that it wouldn't be long that, we would probably be on deck for getting one of these sites. And so we both agreed that was probably the way it was going to happen. And in fact, that is what happened. And so we're seeing, states like Illinois, Ohio, Georgia, North Carolina, the top 10 states get them. I think that there'll probably be more, but I'm not the decider.
Talk to me about costs to run this. I mean, who's funding this? My understanding is the federal government isn't funding all of it. I mean, you said earlier that some of this is going to be reimbursed, but how much of it?
So, all of our eligible cost will be reimbursed. And so that's a typical statement that you hear from really any grant program. And this is Public Assistance Grant Program, Emergency Protective Measures, Category B. And so we have that, what will happen is we do project worksheets. And so we will invoice the federal government. Some of our big costs, like the mall and this parking lot, free.
Because the Four Seasons Town Center here is donating it, right? They
donated it. So that was a good lick for us. So then you have, the DOD. DOD, they're on Title 10 orders. They're already on active duty. So we don't have to pay anything there. We don't have to request any reimbursement. Meals and lodging, we have to we pay. We submit that for repayment. IT infrastructure, iPads, stuff like that we'll be using, we'll get reimbursed for that. Jessica, I will tell you that, in any disaster event, emergency event, FEMA has these, projects, and we execute the projects. And so, like in a hurricane, we will spend a ton of money on National Guard, and then we'll package it up, and we'll send it to the feds, FEMA, and then they will reimburse us.
Tell me finally, sir, as the director of North Carolina Emergency Management, how has the past year been for you? Because I'm from California. We're used to dealing with wildfires. We have command centers set up for wildfires and earthquakes. You guys all have hurricanes here. Every state, every region has their emergency response that they're used to dealing with. But I don't think anybody has set up, the command centers and the logistics and all that for a pandemic. And I'm wondering, just from an emergency management perspective, given your prior experience with other issues, with other problems, how has this past year been?
So we did have a taste of it with the H1N1 in 2009 in dealing with prophylaxis and medical warehouses. And I think also one of the things that we learned from that event, and plus just basically working closely with our state emergency response team partners, is that I stay in close contact with my teammates, even like on days like today. So we have meetings with the chief epidemiologist from DHHS to talk about communicable diseases. That's not during pandemics, that's just during normal times.
Oh, wow.
And so, that's what we do. And so I've got a biosurveillance email that comes to me every day and it's tracking diseases all over the world, like Ebola, African swine fever, all that stuff. And so we talk with those folks, and actually, we were tracking on this a little bit before it actually happened. I mean, we knew it was happening over in China, but I don't think we clearly anticipated, how it would really blow up, right? We knew about it. And so my big lesson learned was, we'll continue working closely with DHHS, keep those relationships strong. But also we learned about PPE, right? And so we had some, and I don't think we could ever have enough to outfit the whole state, but we certainly need to have enough to sort of hold the line until the feds get here with their SNS. We have a state strategic stockpile now, but we want to make sure that we're always ready. We want to make sure that we continue to communicate with our DHHS folks. But what we are hoping in this 365th day of the activation of the state EOC for the pandemic is that these vaccines are going to start making a difference, and so that we're going to turn the corner.
And my last question for you, I see you have to go, is when we were going through the walkthrough earlier, you were talking about emotionally how this makes you feel. How does this make you feel that you're about to start vaccinating thousands of people, and you set this up?
Well, are you kidding? This is the greatest feeling ever. And so, I'm just an old guy from West Charlotte, and, to know that I'm working with these professional teammates that I have that are just so talented, and that we're going to be able to help people potentially. We know we're going to save some lives and keep people from getting sick. That's the best feeling ever, right? Best ever.
Director Sprayberry, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This is Tammy Bruce with your Fox News commentary coming up.
The Democrats' coronavirus financial relief and stimulus plan is signed into law by President Biden.
This historic legislation is about rebuilding the backbone of this country and giving people in this nation, working people, middle-class folks, people who built the country a fighting chance.
The nearly $2 trillion American Rescue Plan passed with precisely zero Republican support in the House or the Senate. They'd presented a plan at the White House the president found to be too small. So Democrats, with their new majorities in the House and Senate, go it alone, passing the first bill of the Biden presidency.
Well, what they really wanted was to find a way to usher in their liberal, progressive, pay everybody bill.
Tim Scott's a Republican senator from South Carolina. We spoke to him yesterday.
And unfortunately, they were able to succeed at that, but hopefully we'll have a chance to push back on it. It is one of the most ridiculous pieces of legislation that has so little to do with COVID relief and everything to do with a progressive's wish list.
Well, I mean, you can have these calls for bipartisanship, but in the end, they just needed Joe Manchin and other centrist Democrats, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at what they've done, they were able to I don't want to use the word buy off, but they were able to negotiate with Manchin to lower the unemployment from 400 to 300, but then they extended it to September. Said in a different way, I believe what we saw happen there was they are now paying people to stay home even longer, not through June or July, but now through September. And interestingly enough, Chris, the unemployment rate has gone down, not up. We had 379,000 new jobs added to the economy. The last thing we need to do is extend the unemployment benefit until September, when in fact the recovery, as fragile as it is, continues.
Senator, a lot of Americans are going to be very happy about this bill, including some of your constituents. South Carolina's got something like the 10th highest poverty rate in the country, and a lot of people are going to be very happy to get this child tax credit and getting essentially huge raises in their take-home pay. What do you tell them?
Well, Chris, this is an easy one, honestly. The road to socialism starts with one step. And the bottom line is that what we're looking at here is not paying people for increased production, not paying people for increased challenges that were brought on by the government. They're simply making this into the progressives' approach to ushering in the first few steps of socialism. And that is a huge challenge. A new study shows that all the COVID stimulus costs each American $17,000. That means that we are simply pushing ourselves in the wrong direction with these resources being put out there. But yes, people like money. There's no question about that. But when they understand that they have to pay it back, they like it less. And when you add interest on top of that, they like it even less. And when they understand that they may be compromising the future of the next generation of Americans by spending money today that we don't have, that we have to borrow from China, that's a bad thing for every single American and every single American child that we have. The generations to come will face an avalanche of debt, unnecessarily so, because of $2 trillion under the guise of COVID relief, when in fact it's social policy that transforms the American economy.
Yeah, now this only got through because of budget reconciliation, where spending bills can be passed with 50 votes and no filibustering. Now, other than spending bills, is this a last gasp for them? Or are they going to get anything through? Their voting rights bill, the House passed last week, an infrastructure plan, there's gun legislation pending. And if they can't get any GOP votes on anything, might they just throw their hands up and say, fine, we're killing the filibuster, everything needs 50 votes?
Well, I watched Joe Manchin try to walk through that minefield on Sunday, and the truth of the matter is what he said was that he is willing to make the filibuster harder to use. That is very dangerous. The filibuster conversation is a slippery slope. We know that if you give the Democrats an inch, they want a mile, and that's not good for the American people. And frankly, the agenda of the left is so radical that the center-right country that we still have is going to have an allergic reaction to the medicine brought to the table. And that may be very good for us in 2022 and prayerfully in 2024. But more importantly, it is just bad policy, and the stench of it will, I think, make people nauseous. The more we see, listen, the thought that we're going to give a 16-year-old the right to vote because they believe they do better with younger people than we do doesn't sound like they're looking for a way to level the playing field. The thought that they want to nationalize elections, we should be looking for ways to limit mail-in ballots, not expand mail-in ballots. We should be looking for ways to expand voter ID, not eliminate voter ID. So what they're trying to do is position this country not to recover from their lurch and then leap to the far, far, far left. Those are dangerous positions in their HR1. And you and I both know that we are going to have to fight tooth and nail to protect the Second Amendment. We are in for that fight. We are in it to win it. We will, because America was founded on the concept that we must have the resources and the arms necessary to defend ourselves, period. And that must stand. And that is one of the reasons why we should be very thankful for our Constitution and especially our Second Amendment rights.
How about immigration? Any common ground there? We're seeing this surge, especially of kids coming in, maybe emboldened by the president having said people asking for refugee status aren't going to be automatically kept in Mexico. Just, more lenient overall. Do you see some common ground there where we can have border security and allow more people in legally with the path to citizenship, maybe?
Well, I certainly hope that we find a way to create the meritocracy that is in the best interest of our nation. The front door is incredibly important. We should open that front door to those folks that improve the quality of life experienced by everyday Americans. We need to not only shut the back door, we need to lock the back door. Think about this. If Nancy Pelosi is willing to build a fence around the Capitol, why won't she build a border that is secure? It doesn't make any sense to me. If you believe in security for yourself, why can't you believe in security for all Americans? And closing and locking the back door is, in fact, common sense for the safety and the security of this nation. I'm happy to have a negotiation on the front door. I'm happy to have a negotiation about a merit-based system that provides us with the workers we need and that continues to do what we've done for the last 245 years, be a home for folks who are looking to improve our country, not tear it apart.
Senator Scott's the only black Republican in the Senate. And last week, MSNBC host Joy Reid, also black, said his presence gives the party the patina of diversity. Monday on Fox News Channel, Senator Scott told host Trey Gowdy on Fox News Primetime,
woke supremacy is as bad as white supremacy. We need to take that seriously.
That set off CNN host Don Lemon, also African-American, saying on his show Wednesday,
I've never seen a woke supremacist lynching anybody. Never saw a woke supremacist denying anybody access to housing or job or education or voting rights. Never saw any woke supremacists enslaving anybody. Never saw any woke supremacists trying to keep people from marrying amongst different races. Come on, Tim Scott.
So we asked the senator if he'd like to clarify or expand on what he meant.
Absolutely. Number one, what I said was that woke supremacy can be as dangerous, at least that's what I attempted to say, as white supremacy. And the reason why I said that was there is a person today on trial who has pled guilty to wanting to take me out. And that person will be sentenced on, I think, March the 29th of this month. He's a African-American liberal who believes that I am out of place, that I don't know my place, that his brand of wokeness is so extreme that he's willing to imperil my life. So when I talked about that, I was, of course, using a little hyperbole. There's no question that the history of our country and the history of white supremacy is one that includes death and murder and the worst of what we would like to see. The history of our country is that we continue to move our arc bend towards justice, even though it has been littered with people who wanted to take advantage of other people. That is bad, but just as bad, maybe not as extreme, but just as bad is this theory of woke supremacy, where, in fact, people who look like me or young white liberals believe that they can now say, if you're not one of us, we cancel you. If you're not staying in line, you don't exist. If you are not in line with a liberal philosophy, then you are, in fact, un-American. You are, in fact, not black. You are, in fact, not female. You're, in fact, not Hispanic. What I'm talking to is that underlying philosophy that is antithetical to what it means to be American. And our history proves that while we have had our challenges, and I have lived through some of those challenges personally of racism, the truth is we continue generation upon generation to get better and better and better. We are living, in my opinion, in the fairest America, in the fairest country ever woven together. Because of that, I want to sound the alarm against those who feel like they are in power today to bring their brand of extremism and supremacy to the surface and punish others who are not like them. Having been discriminated against, the last thing I would want to do is discriminate against others.
Well, look, thanks for that. And I'm sure it's not necessarily fair that you get dragged into discussions about your race in addition to just talking about policy. I'm not asking Kevin McCarthy about being white. I guess it's just the cost of doing business in your position.
Well, it is. And thank you, Chris, for giving me an opportunity to actually talk through what it was that I meant. TV is such a short venue. You've given me an opportunity to really flesh out not the equivocation between two extreme positions, but to understand why we should be very leery of a new generation of folks who believe that one is better than the other. It was bad in the past, it's bad in the present, it will be bad in the future, no matter the color of your skin.
South Carolina Senator Tim Scott on the rundown. Senator, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great day.
Fox News Radio on demand on the Fox News app. Download the app and just click listen. When you swipe left, you can listen to your favorite Fox News talk shows live. Swipe right for the latest Fox News Radio newscasts on demand. Fox News Radio on the Fox News app. Download it today. Rate and review the Fox News Rundown on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
A Minnesota priest has chosen something pretty substantial to give up for Lent this year. Father John Ubel says during this season of sacrifice, he's giving up his collection of baseball cards, something he's amassed over almost 5 decades.
That's the thing about collecting. It brings you back to a point in time.
His collection includes a 1948 Jackie Robinson rookie card and another of Hank Aaron. Father Ubel is donating it to the Aim Higher Foundation in Minnesota for private school scholarships for families in financial need.
Our schools are doing a great job. I have all these cards. I hardly look at them. And so I called up a couple of people at Aim Higher Foundation and said, I've got an idea. Hear me out.
Aim Higher Vice President Ricky Austin says they did.
We listened to Father Ubel's pitch, and immediately we were all in to provide this creative way to give back to the community, making sure that it doesn't matter the size of a parent's paycheck, that they can get into the schools that best serve their children.
The collection almost didn't make it to 2021. Father Ubel says when he was switching work assignments in 2003, he almost got rid of the cards.
I literally had all the cards in a Girl Scout cookie box where they'd been stored. I just was going to throw away cards to free up more space.
He says he was at a dumpster ready to toss them when he decided at the last minute to keep them.
And I can tell you I've never been happier to give something away in my life than this. This has been so fun. I'm having the time of my life.
Father Ubel says he's hoping to raise between $25,000 and $30,000 for the Aim Higher Foundation event. To find out more, go to the aimhigherfoundation.org. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary. Tammy Bruce. What's on your mind?
One of the main concerns when Joe Biden was elected president was that he was going to open the southern border. There was good reason to worry about that, considering the Obama-Biden disastrous immigration policies. But this time was different, we heard some people say. There's no way the Biden administration would dare to reverse former President Trump's success at controlling the border because, hey, we're fighting off a pandemic. The last thing anyone would do would be to open the southern border. That's just crazy talk. Well, apparently not so crazy, because that's exactly what's happening. The Trump immigration and border policies could not have come at a better time, considering the arrival of the China virus. Prior to this deadly viral pandemic delivered up by China, Trump policies were mitigating the steady stream of disease and viruses brought into this country by immigrants trying to cross the border. In 2019, Reuters reported, when undocumented immigrants were found at the border to be infected with everything ranging from mumps, tuberculosis, chickenpox, and influenza, among other contagions, they were quarantined and often removed. It appears that precaution has been abandoned. Along with the Biden administration essentially erasing the southern border, we have now learned that for the thousands who are once again rushing into the country, only a few are tested for COVID-19. And for those who test positive, we shrug and they continue their journey into the interior of our country. The Washington Examiner tells us Border Patrol and ICE are not testing anyone taken into custody. Border Patrol has been increasingly releasing people from its custody because ICE does not have room to accept transfers. Migrants who are released rely on Greyhound and other bus companies to travel to their final destinations in the United States. This catastrophe is the result of electing a man who had run for president condemning Mr. Trump's handling of the coronavirus and pledging to solve the crisis and crush the pandemic. Instead, he has set into motion the actual importation of people with the coronavirus who are then allowed to go on their way with no controls and no plan for mitigation. The Biden administration has absolutely no plan and no real interest in securing the border or in keeping COVID-19 from coming into the country. Right now, you cannot take a flight into the United States, even if you're a citizen, without a negative COVID test. But you can walk across the border without any confirmation of your health status. One of the main methods used by undocumented migrants to disappear into our nation is via bus. Even people who have tested positive at the bus terminal in Brownsville are not presented with any direction or restrictions about their movement. Most of those people then board a bus for, in many instances, cross-country trips, confined with a multitude of other people for hours, if not days. While politicians continue to dilly-dally, over at Independent Women's Voice, of which I'm president, we are acting on a variety of issues to make a difference, including having a petition for you to sign demanding that the Biden administration apply all travel requirements and COVID screening procedures to everyone equally and fairly, including those at the border. If you are refused entry to this country through an airport unless you can produce a negative COVID-19 test, at the very least, we must have that same standard at every point of entry, no matter who is trying to enter the country. This is about keeping you, your family, and community safe, but it is also about not abandoning those to serious and sometimes deadly health risks who have already risked so much coming to this country. They then disappear into migrant communities across the country, subjecting those underserved communities to even more risk and devastation.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network, subscribe and listen to the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Former federal prosecutor and four-term U.S. Congressman from South Carolina brings you a one-of-a-kind podcast. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.